The chandelier sparkled above the grand dining hall, casting a golden glow on the polished marble floor. Laughter, champagne, and music filled the air. Tonight was supposed to be Emily Carter's happiest night, a birthday celebration planned by her husband. She had worn her best maternity dress, her hands gently caressing her growing belly, dreaming of a toast, a kiss, a promise of love renewed. But in one devastating moment, her life shattered. Ryan Carter, her husband of 5 years, raised his glass not to celebrate her, but to announce something that made the entire room gasp. With a smug smile, he declared their marriage over. Right there, in front of family, friends, and business partners, he handed her divorce papers. Emily froze. The whispers around her cut deeper than any knife. He's leaving her? While she's pregnant? On her birthday? The words echoed as tears rolled down her cheeks. Ryan didn't flinch. He wrapped an arm around a younger woman standing beside him, Vanessa, his secretary, and smirked. "I deserve better," he said coldly. "She's weak, needy, and holding me back." Emily's knees trembled. The room blurred. Her birthday candles flickered on the cake, untouched, mocking the dream she had carried in her heart. She wanted to scream, but her voice cracked. Instead, she clutched her stomach, terrified for her unborn child, while guests stared with cruel fascination. Some pitied her, others whispered, and a few even laughed quietly, siding with Ryan. Emily, humiliated, turned to leave, her tears staining the floor. But just as she reached the door, the room fell silent again. A tall man in a dark, tailored suit stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. His eyes fixed on Emily, not with pity, but with something far stronger. The crowd murmured his name, Adrian Blackwood, the mysterious millionaire known for his power and influence. He walked toward her, stopped only inches away, and extended his hand. "Emily," he said softly yet firmly, "you don't deserve this. You deserve everything. Will you marry me?" The hall gasped in shock. Emily's tears froze. What would she say? Emily Carter wasn't the kind of woman you'd notice in a crowded room. She never wore designer clothes, never flaunted jewelry, never chased attention. At 27, her life had been a quiet rhythm of sacrifice and small dreams. She was a school teacher at an underfunded elementary school on the outskirts of the city. The kind of teacher who bought supplies with her own money when budgets fell short. Children loved her kindness. Parents admired her patience. But outside the classroom, Emily's world was painfully fragile. She came from a modest background, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Emily had always been the responsible one, the girl who cooked dinner while her mom worked late shifts, the one who never complained about hand-me-down clothes or birthdays without presents. From a young age, she dreamed not of riches or fame, but of stability, a safe home, a husband who loved her, and a family of her own. When Ryan Carter first walked into her life, she believed her dream had come true. He was handsome, confident, and ambitious. To Emily, he seemed like a man who could protect her from the hardships she had endured. For 5 years, she stood by his side, cheering for his promotions, comforting him through failures, and putting every penny she earned toward their shared future. When she discovered she was pregnant, her heart swelled with joy. At last, she thought she would give her child the life she had never known. A life with 2 parents, a home filled with love. But behind closed doors, her marriage had already begun to crumble. Ryan's once sweet words turned sharp. His long nights at the office turned into secret dinners with his secretary. He began criticizing Emily for everything, her clothes, her cooking, her lack of ambition. She brushed it off, telling herself pregnancy hormones made her sensitive. She kept working, even while carrying his child, believing things would get better once the baby arrived. Yet life had other plans. On her birthday, instead of receiving flowers or a kiss, she received humiliation and betrayal. Ryan's cruelty wasn't just a private wound, it was a public execution of her dignity. Standing under the glittering lights of that restaurant, Emily realized the man she had trusted with her future saw her as disposable. And in that moment, she felt smaller than ever. What made it worse was her utter vulnerability. She had no savings of her own. Every dollar went into Ryan's ventures. She had no parents to lean on. Her mother had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving her with no safety net. She had no close friends. Ryan had discouraged her from keeping many, isolating her under the pretense of focusing on family. And now, carrying a child, she feared being utterly alone, rejected and broke. But fate is strange. Just when Emily believed she had nothing left, someone saw her worth. Someone powerful, someone unexpected. Adrian Blackwood, the millionaire whose name was whispered in boardrooms and charity circles, stepped forward with a gaze that cut through her despair. Unlike Ryan, he didn't see a burden. He saw her strength. The woman who had endured, who had sacrificed, who still held her head high despite being broken. At that moment, Emily's story was no longer just about betrayal. It was about survival. And soon it would become about revenge, justice, and a love she never imagined she deserved. But the question burned in the air. Could she trust again, or would Ryan's betrayal forever chain her heart? The restaurant where everything unfolded wasn't just any restaurant. It was the crown jewel of the city. A place where marble floors gleamed like water under the crystal chandeliers, where the air smelled of roses and expensive wine, and where only the most powerful names could reserve a table. For Emily, it was the kind of place she had only seen in magazines, a world far above her modest teacher's salary. She had walked in that evening with trembling hands, her birthday dress borrowed from a neighbor, her heart racing with hope that Ryan had planned something special. The walls were lined with golden sconces, casting a warm glow that should have felt comforting, but instead made her feel exposed. At the center of the hall stood a towering cake, decorated with pink roses and ivory ribbons, a cruel reminder that this was supposed to be her night. The music, a string quartet playing softly in the corner, sounded like mockery when Ryan's voice cut through the air with his cold declaration. This glittering setting, meant to celebrate love and milestones, became a stage for humiliation. Guests in glittering gowns and tailored suits whispered behind jeweled fingers. Some sipped champagne, their eyes wide with scandalous delight. Others shook their heads, pretending to feel pity, but secretly savoring the drama. Every corner of the restaurant buzzed with judgment, and Emily felt as though the entire city was there to watch her collapse. The contrast was unbearable. Outside, winter snow fell gently on the quiet streets, a blanket of purity and peace. But inside, the room was thick with cruelty, greed, and betrayal. Every flicker of candlelight seemed to magnify Emily's pain. Every polished silver fork and sparkling wine glass reflected her broken image. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the shadows, but the setting trapped her like a spotlight on a stage. For Ryan, however, this was the perfect theater. He had chosen the most opulent setting to announce his freedom, to parade his mistress, and to prove to his business partners that he was a man climbing higher, unchained from a weak wife. He thrived on spectacle, on power plays, on public displays that made him appear untouchable. The setting wasn't just beautiful, it was a weapon he used to destroy her dignity in plain sight. But fate had other intentions for this glittering hall. The same chandeliers that lit her humiliation would also shine on the moment of her salvation. The same whispers that mocked her would later gasp in awe, and the same marble floor that caught her tears would soon bear witness to her rebirth. Because this restaurant wasn't only a place of betrayal, it would become the battlefield where destinies shifted. Emily didn't know it yet, but she would walk out of this building no longer the broken schoolteacher abandoned by her husband. She would walk out as the woman chosen by Adrian Blackwood, a millionaire who could turn her pain into power. The setting mattered, because stories like Emily's need contrast. Her small apartment with peeling paint and secondhand furniture would never have carried the weight of Ryan's cruelty or the power of Adrian's proposal. Only here, beneath chandeliers worth more than her entire salary, in a hall echoing with the laughter of the elite, could her humiliation and her resurrection be etched into memory. The restaurant was no longer just a place for fine dining. It was a stage where betrayal, heartbreak, and destiny collided. And it was only the beginning. For somewhere beneath that golden light, Adrian Blackwood was waiting to turn this palace of humiliation into the birthplace of Emily's new life. Ryan Carter was the kind of man who looked perfect from the outside. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair slicked back and a smile that could charm anyone, he carried himself like the world owed him success. People in business circles called him ambitious, a man destined to rise. But behind the polished suits and practiced charm, Ryan was ruthless, selfish, and cold. He loved attention more than he ever loved Emily. For years, Ryan had convinced Emily that his long hours at the office were for their future. He claimed every late-night meeting, every client dinner was a step toward stability for their growing family. But the truth was uglier. Ryan's climb up the corporate ladder wasn't fueled by love or sacrifice. It was fueled by greed and vanity. He wanted wealth, power, and recognition, and he saw Emily's quiet devotion as weakness. Then came Vanessa Stone, a secretary at his company. Young, glamorous, and cunning, she was everything Emily was not. Where Emily was humble, Vanessa was bold. Where Emily lived simply, Vanessa craved luxury. She played her part well, laughing at Ryan's jokes, flattering his ego, and dangling herself as the prize he deserved. To Ryan, she wasn't just a mistress, she was a symbol of his success. Having Vanessa on his arm proved, in his twisted mind, that he was powerful enough to trade in his wife for a newer model. That night at the restaurant, Ryan paraded Vanessa like a trophy. She wore a red satin dress that clung to her curves, her hand looped possessively around his arm. Her smirk was as sharp as the diamond earrings Ryan had given her. Earrings paid for with money Emily had unknowingly sacrificed. Vanessa thrived on the whispers in the room, enjoying every gasp of scandal as though it was applause for her performance. When Ryan announced the divorce, he didn't just betray Emily. He humiliated her. He leaned into the microphone and said coldly, "I can't keep pretending. Emily is not the woman I need by my side anymore. Vanessa is." The cruelty of his words landed like a knife. He knew Emily was pregnant. He knew it was her birthday. And still, he chose this moment, this stage, to discard her like trash. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others secretly entertained. Ryan thrived on the spectacle. His arrogance swelled as he kissed Vanessa's cheek in front of everyone. "This is the woman who will help me build my future," he added, as if Emily had never been more than a shadow. Emily, trembling, could barely hold back tears. She had given him everything, her trust, her youth, her love, her child growing inside her, and he had thrown it away without a second thought. But to Ryan, it didn't matter. All that mattered was that people saw him as victorious, as a man who upgraded his life. What Ryan didn't realize was that his arrogance was planting the seeds of his downfall. His obsession with appearances blinded him to the truth. Vanessa's loyalty was to money, not to him. And fate had written a twist he could never predict. Vanessa carried a secret that would shatter him. For while Ryan believed he had traded up, the cruel truth would soon reveal itself. Vanessa could never give him the one thing Emily already carried, an heir. The clinking of silverware echoed through the restaurant, a rhythm that should have been celebratory but now sounded like a funeral march. Emily sat at the head table, her birthday cake only inches away, the candles still unlit. Her trembling hands rested on her belly, silently promising her unborn child protection, even as her own world collapsed. She prayed Ryan's announcement was some sick mistake, a cruel joke. But the icy smirk on his face told her otherwise. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ryan said loudly, his arm wrapped around Vanessa, "tonight isn't just Emily's birthday, it's also the night I set myself free." Gasps rippled through the room. Emily's chest tightened. She looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Ryan, what are you doing?" Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. Ryan didn't flinch. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table, and smirked. "Divorce papers. You're holding me back, Emily. You've given me nothing but problems, complaints, bills, and now a pregnancy I never asked for." The words hit her like thunder. Her breath caught, tears spilling down her cheeks as whispers spread like wildfire. He's divorcing her while she's pregnant? On her birthday? How heartless. Vanessa leaned forward, her voice dripping with venom. Ryan doesn't need a weak woman weighing him down. He deserves better. He deserves me. She reached out and deliberately took Emily's birthday cake knife, slicing herself a piece as though mocking her. The crowd laughed nervously, unsure whether to intervene or enjoy the scandal. Emily's face burned with shame. Her knees wobbled as she struggled to stand, but Ryan pressed her down with words sharper than any blade. "Sit, Emily. Don't make a scene. This is the best gift I can give you, the truth." The humiliation was unbearable. Guests turned their heads, pretending to pity her, but Emily saw the smirks hidden behind champagne glasses. She wanted to scream, to throw the cake in Ryan's smug face, but her body betrayed her. Her tears streamed freely, her voice caught in her throat. She felt like a lamb surrounded by wolves, defenseless and broken. Suddenly, her vision blurred. The stress, the betrayal, and the weight of pregnancy collided. Emily swayed, her hands gripping the table for support. Gasps echoed again. "She's fainting," someone shouted. But Ryan didn't move. He simply stepped aside, letting the woman he once vowed to protect crumble in front of everyone. "Pathetic," he muttered under his breath. Vanessa smirked, whispering, "She's not worth our time." Emily collapsed into the chair, clutching her belly, terrified for her child. The room spun, her ears ringing with cruel laughter and whispered gossip. She wanted to vanish, to escape this nightmare, but she was trapped in a spotlight of shame. And then, just as she thought she could endure no more, the air shifted. The heavy doors of the restaurant opened and silence fell. A man's footsteps echoed against the marble floor. Steady, commanding, impossible to ignore. Heads turned. Whispers surged. "It's him." Adrian Blackwood. The millionaire's gaze locked on Emily, not with disgust but with something fierce and protective. He strode forward, his presence enough to silence the cruelest whispers. The crowd, who moments earlier had relished Emily's downfall, now watched breathlessly. Adrian stopped beside her trembling form, his voice calm but strong. "Enough," he said, his eyes burning into Ryan's smug face. Then, turning to Emily, he extended his hand. "Emily," he said for all to hear, "you don't have to endure this another second. You deserve respect, love, and everything this man could never give you." The restaurant froze. The betrayal had been public. But now, so was her chance at redemption. Emily's legs felt like they were made of glass as she stumbled out of the glittering restaurant. The icy night air cut against her tear-streaked cheeks, but she barely noticed. Her body trembled with shock, every step heavy with humiliation. She pressed one hand to her swollen belly, whispering, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry," as if apologizing for dragging her unborn child into the storm of betrayal. She walked aimlessly through the city streets, the glow of neon signs blurring through her tears. Just hours ago, she believed her birthday would be filled with love, laughter, and maybe a promise of a better future. Instead, she had been discarded like garbage in front of strangers and so-called friends. Her husband had shattered her heart, and the life she thought she was building crumbled in a single night. When she finally reached her small apartment, the silence was suffocating. Gone were the sparkling chandeliers and hushed whispers of luxury. Instead, peeling paint and the faint smell of damp carpet greeted her. She collapsed onto the old couch, her sobs echoing through the empty room. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, calls from numbers she didn't recognize, probably reporters hungry for scandal. She threw it aside, curling into herself like a child. The weight of despair pressed down on her. She thought of her mother, gone too soon, the only person who had ever loved her unconditionally. If her mother had been here, she would have wrapped Emily in her arms, told her she was stronger than this. But now there was no one, no family, no friends, no money, just a baby depending on her and a heart splintered into 1,000 pieces. She wandered into the bedroom and caught sight of herself in the cracked mirror. Her hair was messy, her mascara streaked, her face pale with exhaustion. "Look at you," she whispered bitterly. "A failure. A wife who wasn't enough. A mother who can't even protect her child from heartbreak before it's born." The words cut her deeper than Ryan ever could. The night stretched endlessly. She lay in bed, clutching her stomach, her mind replaying the betrayal like a cruel movie. Ryan's smirk, Vanessa's mocking voice, the laughter, the whispers. It was all carved into her soul. Each memory twisted the knife deeper, until she felt she could barely breathe. For a brief, terrifying moment, Emily wondered if it would be easier to give up, to stop fighting, to surrender to the storm that had consumed her life. But then, as if sensing her despair, her baby kicked. A tiny flutter, but strong enough to jolt her back to reality. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they carried something different. Resolve. She placed both hands over her belly and whispered, "No, I can't give up. Not for me, but for you. You deserve a chance at life, a chance at love, even if I don't." Her voice shook, but in that trembling vow lay the seed of her survival. Still, Emily wasn't ready to rise just yet. The pain was too raw, the the wounds too fresh. She needed time to cry, to mourn, to crumble completely before she could rebuild. And so she let the tears flow, let her body shake with grief, let herself break apart in the privacy of her dark, lonely apartment. For sometimes, you have to hit rock bottom before you realize how high you're destined to climb. And Emily's climb was only just beginning. Days passed like shadows for Emily. She dragged herself through each hour, her body heavy with pregnancy and her heart even heavier with despair. Food lost its taste and sleep became a cruel stranger. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ryan's smirk and Vanessa's mocking gaze. She told herself she had to survive for her baby, but inside, she felt like a ghost drifting through the ruins of her life. One evening, as rain hammered against her apartment windows, there was a knock at the door. Emily froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, with trembling hands, she opened it. Standing there was Adrian Blackwood, the same man who had stunned the restaurant with his bold proposal. His presence filled the doorway. Tall, commanding, his dark suit immaculate despite the storm outside, he looked every bit the millionaire people whispered about. But when his eyes met hers, there was no arrogance, no pity, only a steady warmth that made Emily's tears threaten to fall all over again. "Emily," Adrian said softly, "may I come in?" She hesitated. Why would a man like him care about her, a broken, discarded woman with nothing to offer? Yet something in his gaze made her step aside. He walked in, his eyes scanning the small, worn apartment. Unlike Ryan, he didn't sneer at the peeling wallpaper or the sagging couch. Instead, he seemed to notice the baby books stacked neatly on the table, the effort she had made despite her struggles. "I know this is sudden," Adrian began, his voice calm but firm, "but I couldn't stand by and watch you be destroyed. What Ryan did to you was cruel, and I won't allow him to break you completely." Emily's throat tightened. "Why? Why do you care? You don't even know me." Adrian's expression shifted, as if carrying a secret. He took a deep breath. "That's where you're wrong. I do know you, more than you realize. Months ago, I saw you at a charity event. You weren't a guest, you were volunteering. I watched you comfort a frightened child, giving away your own coat to keep her warm. You had no idea anyone was watching, but I never forgot it. In a world where people take and take, you gave. Selflessly. That's why I care. Because women like you are rare." Emily's heart pounded. She remembered the event faintly, a night where she had almost skipped dinner just to donate more. She never imagined anyone noticed, least of all a man like Adrian. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Ryan saw you as weak, but I see you as strong. You carried him when he was nothing. And now he has the audacity to discard you? No. Emily, you deserve better. You deserve a life of dignity, safety, and love." Her tears spilled over, but for the first time, they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of being seen, truly seen. For years, Ryan had made her feel invisible, and now this man, powerful and untouchable in the world's eyes, was telling her she mattered. Adrian paused, studying her. "I'm not asking for an answer now, but know this. I meant what I said that night. I will stand by you, and if you let me, I'll protect you and your child as if they were my own." Emily's breath caught. A spark of hope flickered where there had only been darkness. But deep inside, fear whispered. Could she trust again? Or was this just another illusion waiting to break her heart? The morning after Adrian's visit, Emily stared at herself in the cracked mirror. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair messy, her skin pale. For years, she had looked at this reflection and told herself she wasn't enough. Not smart enough, not pretty enough, not strong enough. Ryan had fed her those lies until she believed them. But Adrian's words lingered in her mind like a lifeline. "I see you as strong." For the first time, she asked herself a question that scared her. What if he was right? She rose from bed and began to move with deliberate intent. The dishes piled in the sink were washed. The scattered bills on the table were stacked and organized. She pulled out her old lesson plans, reminding herself of the teacher she once was. The woman who could inspire children, who had a gift for turning broken crayons into rainbows. Piece by piece, she began reclaiming fragments of herself. It wasn't easy. Her body ached with pregnancy, her heart still throbbed with betrayal, and whispers about Ryan's scandal still followed her. She overheard neighbors gossiping, calling her the poor wife left behind. Each cruel word felt like a stab, but Emily started learning to stand straighter. to remind herself she wasn't defined by their pity. Adrian's presence became a quiet constant. He didn't smother her or try to control her. Instead, he offered small gestures that carried weight. Groceries appeared at her door when her fridge was empty. Her doctor's bill was mysteriously paid before she could panic. A note once slipped under her door simply read, "Keep going. You're stronger than you know." At first, Emily resisted. She hated feeling like a charity case. But slowly she realized Adrian wasn't trying to save her. He was giving her the space to save herself. And so she began to change. She traded her worn clothes for a simple but elegant maternity dress she bought with the last of her savings. When she walked into the school one morning, the other teachers whispered again, but this time their eyes widened, not in pity, but in surprise. Emily carried herself differently. Her back was straighter, her chin higher. She smiled at the children with the same warmth as always, but now, behind that smile, there was a quiet fire. At home, she began writing in a journal. Every night, she poured her pain onto the pages, but alongside it she wrote dreams. Dreams of raising her child with love. Dreams of rebuilding her life. Dreams of proving to the world and to herself that Ryan's betrayal would not be her ending, but her beginning. Her transformation wasn't dramatic at first. It was slow, fragile, like the first buds of spring after a brutal winter. But it was real, and people began to notice. Her landlord, once impatient about late rent, now softened when he saw her determination. Her students clung to her, sensing her newfound strength. Even strangers on the street seemed to glance twice, drawn to the quiet resilience she radiated. Emily was no longer the woman who collapsed in a restaurant under the weight of humiliation. She was becoming someone else, someone who knew pain but refused to be broken by it. And though she didn't know it yet, this transformation would soon be tested in ways she could never imagine. For Ryan and Vanessa were plotting a move that would drag her name through the dirt once more. Ryan Carter hated losing control. For years he had ruled his world with charm and intimidation, and he believed Emily would never survive without him. In his mind, she was weak, dependent, a shadow who would crawl back to him the moment he snapped his fingers. But as weeks passed, whispers reached him, whispers that Emily was changing. She looked radiant at the school. She's not crumbling the way everyone expected. Maybe she's stronger than we thought. Each rumor struck Ryan's pride like a hammer, and what infuriated him most was Adrian Blackwood's name surfacing again and again. Business associates gossiped about how Adrian had been seen near Emily's neighborhood, how his men were quietly ensuring she was protected. Ryan's smug confidence began to crack. If Adrian, a man of wealth and power, stood by Emily, Ryan's image as the victor in their split would collapse. Vanessa fanned the flames of his insecurity. Draped in silk, sipping champagne at their penthouse, she sneered. "If people start sympathizing with Emily, it makes you look weak. They'll say you abandoned a pregnant wife, and Adrian had to pick up the pieces. Do you want to be seen as the villain while he plays the hero?" Ryan's jaw clenched. He wouldn't let Emily rewrite the story. She had to be destroyed completely. Her dignity, her reputation, her future. The next day, headlines appeared in glossy tabloids. Pregnant wife too fragile for real life. Ryan Carter forced to move on. Anonymous sources painted Emily as unstable, a hysterical woman who pushed Ryan away with her insecurities. Some articles even suggested the baby might not be his, a cruel fabrication designed to smear her. Emily read the words in shock, her hands trembling. "They're lying," she whispered, clutching her stomach as tears blurred the print. But gossip spreads faster than truth. Parents at her school started questioning her professionalism. Neighbors whispered louder. Every step outside her apartment became another trial by fire. But Ryan and Vanessa weren't done. At a charity gala weeks later, Ryan made sure to arrive with Vanessa glowing on his arm. Cameras flashed as he laughed loudly, saying within earshot of reporters, "I feel free now. Some women just aren't built for men like me. But Vanessa, she's my future." His words weren't just arrogance. They were daggers aimed straight at Emily's heart. Vanessa added her own venom, giving a smirk to the press. Some people aren't cut out to stand beside greatness. They crumble under the weight. The headlines the next morning turned Emily into a tragic punchline. Discarded wife can't keep up with ambitious husband. Back in her small apartment, Emily collapsed into her chair, her journal open before her. She felt the walls closing in again, the whispers clawing at her sanity. She had tried to rise, to be strong, but Ryan and Vanessa were dragging her name through the mud until she couldn't breathe. For hours she cried, her sobs raw and broken. She pressed her hands to her stomach, whispering to her baby, "I'm trying. I swear I'm trying." She thought of giving up, of retreating into silence forever. But then her phone buzzed. A message. One line that reignited the fire Adrian had planted in her. "Let them talk. Soon, the truth will bury them. A.B." Emily wiped her tears. The storm wasn't over. In fact, it was only beginning. Because for every cruel headline Ryan planted, Adrian was preparing a revelation that would turn the world against him. And for the first time, Emily wouldn't face the fight alone. At first, Ryan and Vanessa basked in their stolen spotlight. They dined at the finest restaurants, posed for cameras at galas, and flooded social media with photos of luxury trips and sparkling champagne. To the world, they looked untouchable. A powerful couple rising above scandal. Ryan relished the attention. Vanessa loved the diamonds. Together, they believed they had won. But behind the carefully crafted image, cracks began to show. It started subtly. One evening, Ryan arrived home later than usual, his tie loosened, his eyes bloodshot. Vanessa was waiting, draped across their velvet couch in a silk robe. "Where were you?" she demanded. "Meetings," Ryan muttered, pouring himself a drink. "Meetings?" she scoffed. "Your company's bleeding money, Ryan. Don't act like you're still in control. I read the reports. Investors are pulling out. Projects are stalling. Adrian Blackwood is circling like a hawk. Do you realize how bad this looks?" Ryan's face darkened. Don't say his name in this house. But he couldn't deny it. Adrian's quiet but decisive moves in the business world were crushing him. Contracts Ryan expected to win were suddenly awarded to Adrian's firms. Investors he thought loyal began withdrawing. And all the while, whispers grew louder. Ryan wasn't the genius businessman he claimed to be. He was reckless, arrogant, and spiraling. The stress began to poison his relationship with Vanessa. She, once charming and seductive, grew restless. The glamour of being with Ryan faded as his wealth became uncertain. She wanted stability, not chaos. And beneath her sharp exterior she hid a secret that terrified her. She couldn't give him the child he craved. The truth came out one night in the middle of another argument. Ryan, pacing furiously, shouted, "Do you realize how humiliating this is? Adrian has everything, and I have nothing. At least Emily is carrying my heir. What do I have with you?" Vanessa froze, her face pale. "Don't you dare," she whispered. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "You've been avoiding this conversation for months. I want children. That was the deal. You promised me everything Emily couldn't give me. So why hasn't it happened?" Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. Tears not of sorrow but of rage. "Because I can't, Ryan. I can't give you a child. Ever." The words hung heavy in the air, breaking the illusion of their perfect partnership. Ryan's glass shattered against the wall. "You lied to me," he hissed. "You let me throw away my marriage, my reputation, my life, for nothing." Vanessa's voice dripped with venom. "Don't you dare blame me. You chose to humiliate your wife. You chose greed over loyalty. And now you want to point the finger at me? Look in the mirror, Ryan. You're not a victim. You're a fool." For the first time, their voices carried through the walls of their penthouse, servants exchanging uneasy glances. The glamorous couple that once dazzled the city was nothing more than a crumbling illusion. Outside, the world still believed in their sparkle. Cameras still flashed, headlines still painted them as the city's new power couple. But inside, venom and resentment grew stronger with every passing day. And Emily, though unaware of every detail, could sense the shift. The tabloids that once mocked her began printing subtle hints of Ryan's struggles. Adrian's influence spread quietly, tipping the balance. The same chandeliers that once illuminated Emily's humiliation would soon shine on Ryan's downfall. For the facade was cracking, and when it shattered, the world would see the truth. Ryan Carter was not a man on top of the world, but a man about to lose everything. The sting of betrayal still lived inside Emily like a fresh wound, but something inside her had begun to shift. The nights of endless tears were giving way to mornings where she woke with determination. She could no longer afford to be the broken woman Ryan and Vanessa wanted her to be. She had a baby growing inside her, a life that depended on her strength. Her first test came at the school where she worked. Gossip had spread like wildfire after Ryan's public announcement. Parents whispered, colleagues cast sympathetic but judgmental glances, and a few even questioned whether she was fit to continue teaching while carrying so much scandal on her shoulders. One morning, a particularly cold mother approached her after class. "Mrs. Carter," the woman sneered, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, "I think it's unfair that someone in your situation is still teaching our children. Don't you think your personal mess is too distracting? Perhaps you should step down." Emily's face flushed. In the past, she would have shrunk away, apologizing even when she had done nothing wrong. But not this time. She straightened her back, placed a protective hand on her belly, and looked the woman directly in the eyes. "My personal life is none of your business," she said calmly, her voice steady. "What matters is what happens in this classroom. And if you look at your child's grades, you'll see they've improved since I became their teacher. My students deserve stability, and I intend to give them that, no matter what anyone says about me." The mother blinked, stunned into silence. Other parents who had been eavesdropping exchanged surprised glances. For the first time since the scandal, Emily had spoken with authority, not shame. And it worked. The gossip quieted, at least for the moment. That night, she returned to her apartment with a flicker of pride burning in her chest. She sat at her desk, opened her journal, and wrote, "Today I defended myself. Today I didn't break." The words felt powerful, like the first bricks in a foundation she was rebuilding for herself and her child. Adrian noticed the change too. When he visited later that week, he found Emily sorting through applications for part-time tutoring work. "You're not giving up," he said, a hint of admiration in his tone. "I can't," Emily replied softly. "I've been broken down to nothing, but I won't let my child grow up seeing me as weak. I have to stand tall, even if my legs shake." Adrian's eyes softened. "That's the kind of strength Ryan could never understand, and it's the reason you'll rise above all this." Her first victory wasn't about money, fame, or revenge. It was about reclaiming her voice, the very thing Ryan had stolen. She realized she didn't need the world's approval to validate her worth. She just needed to keep standing, keep fighting, and keep loving the child who gave her reason to breathe. The victory was small, almost invisible to the outside world, but to Emily, it was monumental. For the first time in months, she fell asleep without tears on her pillow. And while she celebrated this tiny triumph, she had no idea it was only the first step toward something far greater. Because soon, Ryan's empire would begin to crumble, and Emily would find herself holding the very power he once used to destroy her. Ryan Carter was not used to losing. In his world, power was everything, and he had always believed he could manipulate, charm, or crush anyone who stood in his way. But as weeks passed, the cracks in his empire widened. Investors whispered about his reckless spending. Business partners quietly backed away. And most humiliating of all, rumors began to spread that Adrian Blackwood was protecting Emily. To Ryan, this was unacceptable. How could his discarded wife, the woman he had publicly humiliated, be standing taller while he struggled? Every new whisper about Emily's resilience felt like a slap in the face. Every glance of pity from his associates cut his pride deeper. One night, pacing his office, Ryan slammed his fist onto the mahogany desk. Vanessa lounged nearby, scrolling through her phone, sipping wine. "You're letting her win," she taunted. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "She's not going to win. She's nothing without me. I made her. And if Adrian thinks he can steal my spotlight by playing her savior, he's dead wrong." Fueled by rage, Ryan devised a plan. He would drag Emily through the mud so deeply that no one would ever believe in her again. The tabloids had already planted seeds of doubt, but now he wanted more. He instructed his lawyers to file claims that questioned Emily's fitness as a mother. Whisper campaigns began, accusing her of being unstable, unfit to raise a child. Emily learned of this when a social worker knocked on her door one gray morning. "Mrs. Carter," the woman said gently, "there have been concerns raised about your ability to provide a safe environment for your baby. We'll need to conduct a home evaluation." The words hit Emily like a blow to the chest. Her hands trembled as she guided the woman through her small apartment, shame gnawing at her as she noticed the peeling wallpaper, the uneven floors, the fridge with only a few cartons of milk. She tried to smile, to explain she was doing her best, but fear churned in her stomach. That evening, she collapsed on the couch, clutching her belly, whispering, "He wants to take you away from me." The thought nearly broke her. But then she remembered Adrian's words, "You are stronger than you know." She picked up her phone with trembling fingers and called him. Within an hour, Adrian was at her door. He listened as she poured out everything, her voice cracking with fear. When she finished, he leaned forward, his expression sharp with determination. "Ryan is desperate," Adrian said firmly. "This is the move of a man who's already lost. He thinks he can intimidate you into surrendering, but he underestimated you and me." Within days, Adrian's lawyers countered every one of Ryan's claims with evidence of Emily's devotion. Teachers, parents, and even students from her school wrote letters praising her kindness and integrity. The social worker returned, but this time she saw not just a struggling woman, but a community quietly rallying around her. Ryan raged when he heard the investigation had closed in Emily's favor. He smashed glasses, shouted at Vanessa, and barked at his staff. But no amount of fury could erase the truth. Emily had survived his attack, and in doing so, she had gained sympathy and respect. Ryan's desperation had backfired. Instead of destroying Emily, he had revealed his own cruelty, and the world was beginning to turn against him. For months, Vanessa Stone had played her role flawlessly. She was the younger, glamorous woman who gave Ryan everything his ego craved: admiration, desire, and the illusion of superiority. Together, they flaunted their wealth at galas and plastered their smiles across tabloids, pretending their love was unshakable. But behind closed doors, the truth was far more fragile. Ryan had always made it clear: he wanted children. More than money, more than status, he craved an heir to carry his name. Emily had already given him that gift. She was pregnant, and despite his cruel words, Ryan secretly clung to the idea of a son to inherit his legacy. But Vanessa had promised him more. She had whispered of starting a family together, painting vivid pictures of a future filled with laughter, luxury, and little ones running through their penthouse halls. Only it was all a lie. One rainy afternoon, Ryan stormed into the penthouse after another failed business meeting. His empire was crumbling, contracts slipping away, investors fleeing, Adrian Blackwood looming larger than ever. Frustration twisted his face as he turned to Vanessa, who lounged in silk pajamas, scrolling idly through her phone. "When are you going to give me a child?" he snapped, his voice sharp. Vanessa's eyes flickered with panic. "Ryan, no more excuses," he cut her off. "We've been together long enough. I threw my marriage away for you. I humiliated myself for you. You said you wanted a family, so why hasn't it happened?" For once, Vanessa's mask cracked. Her hands shook as she set down her glass of wine. Her voice, usually dripping with confidence, was barely a whisper. "Because I can't. I can't give you children, Ryan. I never could." The words echoed in the vast silence of the penthouse. Ryan stared at her, disbelief etched across his face. "What do you mean you can't?" Tears filled Vanessa's eyes, not of sorrow, but of fury. "I'm infertile, Ryan. The doctors told me years ago. But if I had told you the truth, you never would have chosen me. So yes, I lied. I gave you everything else you wanted: glamour, passion, attention. But a child? That will never happen." The revelation hit Ryan like a wrecking ball. The walls of his carefully constructed fantasy came crashing down. He had abandoned Emily, the one woman carrying his child, for a mistress who could never give him what he desired most. His face twisted with rage. "You used me." Vanessa shot back with venom. "Don't pretend you're the victim. You used me too. I was your prize, your upgrade, the proof to the world that you could trade in your boring wife for someone younger. You wanted a trophy, Ryan, and you got one. But trophies don't give birth." The argument spiraled into a screaming match, their voices echoing through the penthouse halls. Servants whispered behind closed doors, hearing the couple who once looked untouchable tearing each other apart. That night, Ryan smashed a crystal decanter against the wall and stormed out, leaving Vanessa seething with bitterness. The tabloids still painted them as perfect, but inside their gilded cage, love had turned to poison. What neither of them realized was that secrets like this never stay buried. Their cracks were widening, and soon the world would learn the truth. For Emily carried the heir Ryan had thrown away, and Vanessa's infertility would be the spark that burned their empire to ash. Ryan Carter had built his empire on smoke and mirrors, flashy presentations, risky deals, and a carefully polished image of success. For years, people believed in his charm, his ambition, his supposed genius. But empires built on lies eventually crumble. And Ryan's collapse began with a single headline: Carter Enterprises under investigation for fraudulent dealings. The words blazed across every financial newspaper and lit up every news channel. Overnight, the man who once boasted of being untouchable became the city's newest scandal. Investors withdrew millions in panic. Banks froze his accounts. Stock prices plummeted. The glamorous world Ryan and Vanessa had flaunted began to vanish. Brick by brick, Ryan stormed through his office, shouting at employees who avoided his gaze. Phones rang nonstop, lawyers demanded answers, and reporters camped outside the building. He slammed his fists on the boardroom table, shouting, "It's all lies. I'll fix this. I always fix this." But the truth was simple. Adrian Blackwood had moved quietly, pulling strings, exposing every reckless deal Ryan had hidden. Documents surfaced, emails leaked, and witnesses stepped forward. Ryan's empire wasn't just collapsing, it was being dismantled piece by someone far more powerful. Vanessa felt the sting too. The invitations to high society events stopped arriving. The friends who once clung to her side began to vanish. No one wanted to be associated with a sinking ship. She found herself alone in boutiques where clerks once fawned over her, their smiles replaced with cold indifference. The tabloids that had once celebrated the couple now mocked them mercilessly. From power to pathetic, Ryan Carter's fall from grace. Paparazzi captured photos of Ryan looking disheveled, his suit wrinkled, his once perfect hair unkempt. Beside him, Vanessa's forced smiles barely masked her fury. Emily watched from afar, her hands resting gently on her growing belly. She didn't celebrate his downfall, at least not openly. But a quiet sense of justice filled her heart. For the first time, Ryan was facing the consequences of his cruelty. The world that once laughed at her was now laughing at him. Still, Ryan refused to accept defeat. One evening, he burst into the penthouse, slamming the door so hard the chandelier rattled. "This is all Emily's fault," he spat. "She's working with Adrian. She's behind this." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "You're paranoid. Adrian doesn't need Emily to destroy you. You're doing that all by yourself." Ryan's face contorted with rage. "Don't you dare mock me. She humiliated me by surviving. She was supposed to crumble. Instead, she's standing while I—" He stopped, his voice cracking. For the first time, he admitted aloud what he feared most. "I'm losing everything." Vanessa crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "You think this is bad? Wait until the world finds out you left your pregnant wife for me, and I can't even give you a child. They'll crucify you, Ryan. And when that day comes, don't expect me to stand beside you." Her words cut deeper than any headline. Ryan staggered back, realizing the truth. Not only was his empire slipping away, but so was the woman he had sacrificed everything for. The man who once strutted through boardrooms like a king now sat in the ruins of his kingdom, haunted by the ghosts of his choices. And as the cracks widened, one thing became certain: Ryan's downfall was no longer coming. It had already begun. The invitation arrived in a cream-colored envelope, embossed with gold lettering: the Winter Charity Gala. It was the city's most prestigious event of the season, a night where fortunes were flaunted, reputations built, and secrets whispered behind crystal glasses. For Emily, the very thought of attending such an event felt surreal. Months ago, she'd been the woman sobbing in a dim apartment, abandoned and humiliated. Now, thanks to Adrian's quiet guidance, she stood in front of a mirror, her reflection transformed. The elegant gown draped across her figure was midnight blue, its satin shimmer accentuating her growing belly with dignity rather than shame. Her hair, once messy and forgotten, was styled into soft waves. For the first time in years, Emily saw herself not as broken, but as radiant. Adrian appeared at her door, offering his arm. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice calm yet filled with an unspoken promise. Emily hesitated, her hand on her stomach. What if they laugh? What if I walk into that room and they see me the same way Ryan did? Adrian's eyes softened. Then let them laugh. You don't live for them, Emily. You live for yourself and your child. Tonight, you show the world that you are not weak. You are unshakable. With a deep breath, she took his arm. Together, they entered the gala. The chandelier sparkled above, music swelled, and heads turned instantly. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Emily walked gracefully across the marble floor. Is that her? She looks incredible. She's glowing. The same people who once pitied her now watched in awe. Across the room, Ryan and Vanessa stood near the bar. Ryan's suit was perfectly tailored, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion and bitterness. Vanessa clung to his arm, her smile brittle, forced. When he saw Emily walk in beside Adrian, his smirk faltered. The sight of his discarded wife shining brighter than ever sent a surge of fury through him. "Don't let them get to you," Vanessa whispered, but her grip on his arm tightened. Even she could feel the shift in the room. Emily didn't seek attention, but she couldn't avoid it. Guests approached her, congratulating her on her pregnancy, praising her resilience. Some whispered apologies for ever believing Ryan's lies. Each kind word was a balm to wounds she thought would never heal. At one point, a guest turned to Ryan and remarked, "Your ex-wife looks extraordinary. Adrian's a lucky man." The humiliation burned in Ryan's chest, and he drained his glass of whiskey in one gulp. Later in the evening, the host called for attention. "Tonight, we honor those who have given selflessly to our community." To Emily's shock, her name was announced. Adrian had quietly submitted her years of service as a teacher, her volunteer work at shelters, her dedication to children. The crowd applauded as Emily stepped forward, her hands trembling, her heart racing. Standing on the stage under the lights, she spoke softly but firmly. "I was told I was weak, that I had nothing to offer. But strength isn't about wealth or power. It's about love, about sacrifice, about standing even when life tries to break you. I stand here not as a victim, but as a mother, as a teacher, as a woman who refuses to be defined by betrayal." The applause thundered through the hall. Adrian's eyes gleamed with pride. Ryan's face darkened with rage. Vanessa's smile cracked completely. For in that glittering room the balance had shifted. Emily was no longer the broken wife. She was the woman the world now admired, and Ryan could feel his empire slipping further from his grasp. The applause still thundered in Emily's ears as she stepped down from the stage, her heart pounding. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't drowning in shame. She was standing tall, with dignity, with strength. Adrian's steady hand guided her back into the crowd, and everywhere she turned, people smiled at her with genuine admiration. But on the far side of the ballroom, Ryan Carter's world was collapsing. His grip on his whiskey glass tightened until his knuckles turned white. Every cheer for Emily felt like a dagger in his chest. The woman he had cast aside, humiliated and mocked, was being celebrated in front of the very people he once tried to impress. Vanessa sensed his fury. "Calm down," she hissed under her breath. "Losing your temper will only make you look worse." Ryan ignored her. His pride, already shattered by financial ruin and whispers of scandal, couldn't take this final blow. Fueled by alcohol and rage, he stormed across the marble floor, his footsteps echoing. Conversations fell silent as guests turned to watch. He stopped in front of Emily, his face twisted with anger. "Enjoying yourself?" he spat. "So this is who you are now, parading around with Blackwood pretending you're someone important?" The room grew tense. Adrian moved slightly closer, his presence protective, but Emily held up a hand. For once, she didn't want anyone to shield her. Her voice was calm, steady. "I don't need to pretend, Ryan. For the first time in my life, I'm being seen for who I really am. And you can't stand it, can you?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ryan's face turned crimson. "Don't act like you're better than me. You were nothing without me. Nothing." His words rang through the hall, desperate and venomous. Emily's chin lifted. "If I was nothing, then why are you so afraid now?" The crowd murmured, some stifling laughter, others shaking their heads at Ryan's unraveling. His image, once polished and commanding, now looked pitiful. An angry man lashing out while his ex-wife stood poised and dignified. In a final, reckless move, Ryan pointed at her belly. "That child, you think it makes you powerful? It's nothing but a burden. Adrian doesn't want a broken woman with another man's baby." The cruelty of the statement sucked the air out of the room. Guests gasped in horror. Vanessa's face went pale, realizing Ryan had gone too far. Before Emily could speak, Adrian stepped forward, his voice like steel. "Enough." He wrapped an arm gently around Emily and turned to the crowd. "This woman is carrying life. She is carrying hope, And any man who dares call that a burden is not just a coward, he is unworthy of the title of father, husband, or even man. The ballroom erupted in applause. Emily's eyes filled with tears, not of pain this time, but of relief. She wasn't alone, not anymore. Ryan stood frozen, his face contorted with fury as the applause grew louder. He had come to humiliate Emily, but instead he had humiliated himself. Vanessa slipped away from his side, her expression cold. She didn't want to be tied to a man who had just destroyed what little reputation he had left. And in that glittering hall, under the chandeliers that once bore witness to Emily's pain, Ryan Carter faced the humiliation he could never escape. The world now saw him for exactly what he was, a bitter, broken man. The ballroom still buzzed with the echo of applause after Adrian's sharp defense. Emily stood frozen at his side, her heart pounding in her chest. For so long she had been invisible, silenced, and broken. And now, in front of the very crowd that once whispered against her, she was standing as someone worthy of respect. But Adrian wasn't finished. The millionaire turned slowly, releasing Emily's hand only to take a deliberate step forward. His tall frame and commanding presence drew every pair of eyes. Even the orchestra, sensing something monumental, fell silent. The air thickened with anticipation. Adrian looked directly at Emily, his gaze unwavering. "Tonight," he began, his deep voice carrying across the hall, "we witnessed a cruel man reveal his true colors. But we also witnessed something far greater. A woman who endured pain, humiliation, and betrayal, yet still stands with dignity and strength." Emily's eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Adrian continued, his tone steady and sincere. "I've admired you long before this night, Emily. I saw your kindness when you thought no one was watching, your selflessness when you had nothing to give, and your courage when life gave you every reason to give up. You are not weak. You are extraordinary." Gasps fluttered across the room. Ryan, standing a few feet away, clenched his fists, his jaw tightening with rage. Vanessa quietly slipped into the crowd, unwilling to face the spectacle. Adrian turned fully toward Emily, his eyes softening as he slowly dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped louder, a ripple of shock sweeping through the room. Cameras flashed. Whispers became excited murmurs. Emily's hands flew to her mouth. "Adrian," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. He reached into his pocket and revealed a small velvet box. Inside glimmered a diamond ring, elegant yet understated, symbolic of the man himself. "Emily Carter," Adrian said firmly, "I know your heart has been broken. I know you've been told you're unworthy. But I see you. I see your strength, your love, and the incredible future you're carrying. I don't want to rescue you. I want to stand beside you, to protect you, to honor you, and to build a life with you and your child." The entire ballroom was silent now, every guest leaning forward, waiting for her answer. Adrian's voice softened, though it carried the weight of conviction. "So I ask you, not as a millionaire, not as a man trying to replace what you've lost, but simply as someone who loves you. Emily, will you marry me?" Emily's tears fell freely. Her mind raced, flashes of Ryan's cruelty, nights of loneliness, the fear of raising her child alone. And now, standing before her was a man offering her not just love, but respect, dignity, and hope. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Even Ryan, seething, couldn't move. The moment was frozen in time, shimmering under the chandeliers. Emily placed her trembling hand on her belly, then looked into Adrian's eyes. Her lips parted, her voice shaky but filled with newfound courage. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, stronger. "Yes, I will marry you." The ballroom erupted in thunderous applause. Strangers cheered, women wiped tears, men nodded with admiration. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her forehead gently, reverently. Ryan stumbled back, his face pale with fury and disbelief. In one single moment, everything he had tried to destroy had blossomed into something greater than he could ever achieve. And as Emily stood beside Adrian, radiant with hope, the world finally saw her not as the broken wife of Ryan Carter, but as the cherished bride of Adrian Blackwood. The night of Adrian's proposal marked the turning point. For Emily, it was the birth of a new chapter. For Ryan and Vanessa, it was the beginning of their final downfall. The media wasted no time. Photographs of Emily glowing beside Adrian flooded every news outlet. Headlines read, "From betrayed wife to millionaire's bride, Emily Carter's stunning rise." The narrative flipped overnight. The world no longer saw her as the humiliated victim. They saw her as a survivor, a woman of dignity who had captured the heart of a man more powerful than Ryan could ever hope to be. And with that shift, Ryan's empire crumbled faster. Business partners abandoned him, unwilling to be linked to a man publicly shamed as cruel and unstable. Investors pulled out entirely, whispering that Blackwood was the safer, smarter bet. Ryan's once lavish office was stripped bare, creditors circling like vultures. Meanwhile, Vanessa faced her own reckoning. The secret of her infertility, once hidden in the shadows of their penthouse, leaked into the press. Whether whispered by rivals or uncovered by Adrian's investigators, the truth spread like wildfire. The headlines were merciless. Carter left pregnant wife for mistress who couldn't give him a child. The scandal was explosive. Overnight, Vanessa's glamorous facade shattered. The society circles she once ruled slammed their doors shut. Invitations stopped coming. Former friends turned cold, mocking her behind closed doors. The pressure pushed Ryan and Vanessa into open war with each other. Their once cozy penthouse became a battlefield. Screams echoed through the marble halls. Ryan blamed Vanessa for lying, for stealing his future. Vanessa spat venom, reminding him he had destroyed his marriage for her. "You threw away everything," she hissed one night, her eyes burning with hatred. "And for what? A fantasy. Now you have nothing. Not me, not Emily, not your empire." Financial ruin came swiftly. The bank repossessed Ryan's luxury cars, the penthouse went up for sale, and the very watch he once flaunted, the symbol of his arrogance, was auctioned off to pay debts. Paparazzi captured photos of him stumbling out of a courtroom, disheveled, his once tailored suits replaced with wrinkled, ill-fitting clothes. The headlines mocked him mercilessly. From power broker to penniless, Ryan Carter hits rock bottom. As for Vanessa, her beauty and charm were no longer currency. With no wealth to cling to and no status to elevate her, she slipped into obscurity. Their breakup was as public as their rise had been. Cameras captured the moment she stormed out of the penthouse for the last time, shouting, "You ruined me." Ryan didn't chase her. He couldn't. His pride was gone, his wealth gone, his so-called love gone. For Emily, the justice was bittersweet. She never sought revenge, but fate had delivered it all the same. The man who had called her weak was exposed as the weakest of all. The woman who mocked her womb was revealed barren of both children and loyalty. Together, Ryan and Vanessa had destroyed themselves. In the end, Ryan was left alone in a cheap apartment, staring at empty bottles and unpaid bills. The once proud man who sneered at Emily's nothingness had become the very thing he feared most: irrelevant, forgotten, discarded. And while Emily's life blossomed with love and promise, Ryan and Vanessa's ruin was complete, proof that betrayal, greed, and arrogance always demand their price. Spring arrived with soft breezes and blooming flowers, as though the world itself had chosen to mirror Emily's transformation. She stood on the balcony of Adrian's estate, the morning sun painting her face with warmth. Her hands rested on her belly, now round and full of life. For the first time in years, she felt peace. The woman who had once stumbled out of a restaurant in tears, abandoned on her birthday, was gone. In her place stood a woman reborn, resilient, loved, and ready for the future. The journey had carved scars into her heart, but those scars had become symbols of survival, proof that she could endure anything and rise stronger. Adrian stepped out beside her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. His presence was steady, grounding her in ways Ryan never could. "How are you feeling today?" he asked softly. Emily smiled, her eyes shining. "Hopeful," she replied. "For the first time in a long time, I believe tomorrow will be better than today." Weeks later, their wedding was held in a sunlit garden. It was nothing like the opulence Ryan once demanded. No chandeliers, no hollow grandeur. Instead, it was intimate, filled with laughter, joy, and genuine love. Guests wept openly as Emily walked down the aisle, radiant in a gown that flowed like a whisper of grace. Adrian's gaze never left her, his eyes reflecting the vow he had already lived by, to honor, cherish, and protect her. When the minister declared them husband and wife, applause erupted, not from obligation, but from hearts touched by Emily's story. Her kiss with Adrian was not just the sealing of a marriage, it was a victory over every cruel word, every betrayal, every night of despair. Meanwhile, the world had not forgotten Ryan and Vanessa. Their names were now synonymous with greed and downfall. Ryan was last seen staggering out of a pawn shop, selling off the remnants of his once luxurious life. Vanessa disappeared from headlines altogether, replaced by whispers of debts and desperation. Together, they had become a cautionary tale, proof that betrayal destroys while truth endures. Emily, however, no longer needed revenge. Watching their ruin brought her no glee, only closure. She had wasted enough tears on them. Her future was no longer chained to their cruelty. Months later, Emily held her newborn child in her arms, the baby's tiny fingers wrapped around hers, fragile yet strong. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "You'll never know the pain I went through," she whispered softly to her child, "because I'll make sure your life is filled with love, not betrayal. You'll grow up knowing your worth." Adrian entered quietly, gazing at them with awe. "She looks just like you," he murmured, pressing a kiss to Emily's forehead. Emily smiled through her tears. "No, she looks like hope." In that moment, Emily's story came full circle. She had been abandoned, humiliated, left for nothing. Yet she emerged not just alive, but victorious. She had love, respect, family, and a future brighter than she ever imagined. Her scars would never fully fade, but she no longer wanted them to. They reminded her of who she once was, and how far she had come. And as she rocked her child to sleep, Emily whispered the truth she had fought so hard to learn. Betrayal may break you, but it will never define you. Only love, resilience, and hope have the power to write the ending. So, my friends, the story has come to an end. You're still here with me, aren't you? And if you've stayed all the way until now, it must mean something in this story has touched your heart in its own way. Maybe it reminded you of pain you've carried, or maybe it showed you a light you've been searching for. What Emily's journey teaches us is simple, yet powerful. Betrayal does not define you. Life may break you, but it is within your control to choose how you rise again. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Emily found her strength, not by seeking revenge, but by embracing dignity, love, and hope. And maybe that's the message for us all, that even in our darkest moments, we still have the power to heal, to grow, and to rewrite our own story. If this story reached you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe. Together, let's keep building a place where stories inspire us to stand stronger.